unfolded in the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad and by the scholars. An excellent example of this is prayer. There is no way that you could actually get 5 daily prayers out of reading the Quran, and there is no way that you would know all the different movements that you have to do from the Quran. You could kind of gather it a little bit. You probably come up with 3 general times of the day. You bow, you prostrate, but you wouldn't know what to say. That's about what you come up with. The same with zakat, that is the alms tax. You really can't get the exact principles of it. The same with the Hajj, the pilgrimage. Exactly how one would do it. It's okay, we're supposed to do it, how would we do it? The same with fasting Ramadan, the exact restrictions. You couldn't get it all out of the Quran. But there are other matters in which the Quran provides both the principles and the detailed teachings on how to apply these principles in particular circumstances. And this is the case with jihad, with fighting, with warfare. The Quran instructs Muslims how to, as it puts for warfare, strive on God's behalf in times of peace, in times of strife, and in times of war. It instructs Muslims as to when opponents must be fought, even how they must be fought. And when war must, as the Quran says in 2 different verses, lay down its burdens. When treason and sedition must be rooted out, and when forgiveness and reconciliation should prevail. The overriding principle is that justice and equality must be established for peace to be maintained. But when this does not happen, and when it cannot be obtained by peaceful means, aggression is not only permitted, but sometimes necessary. When a fair and equitable justice is established, there should be no recourse to aggression. As the Quran says, "O you who believe, enter into peace entirely." Now, returning to this question of patience and restraint, with which I began, some of the last verses of the Quran to be revealed are emphatic that under no circumstances should Muslims allow the manner in which other people conduct themselves to condition the manner in which Muslims conduct themselves. Verse 5:2 in Surah 5 of the Quran is considered to be the last long surah to be revealed. Verse 2 of Surah 5 states, "Let not hatred for a people who once turned you away from the sacred mosque lead you to transgress. Help one another toward piety and reverence." And it's interesting, some commentators on this last verse, "help one another toward piety and reverence," they actually say that this means those who had opposed the Muslims. Help them. This is then reaffirmed a few verses later in verse 8 of Surah 5, which states, "O you who believe, be steadfast for God, bearing witness to justice, and let not hatred for a people lead you to be unjust. Be just, that is nearer to reverence." As an aside here, I should say that this is the basic principle that the Prophet Muhammad followed when he conquered Mecca. And it's a very interesting thing that one of my professors once said to me, and this is his opinion, we don't know for fact, but he said, had Ayatollah Khomeini followed those verses of the Quran and the example of the Prophet Muhammad when he came to power in Iran, rather than seeking vengeance, as he did, he said he would have had the whole Muslim world eating from his hand. I don't know if that's true, but it shows you the way that some people view the potential applicability of these verses. Now, this is overall understood as the overriding principle when dealing with those who oppose one's religion or one's contingent in Islam. And there are other verses of the Quran that say, when you're disputing with the people of the book, that is with the Jews and the Christians, do it in a kindly manner or in a goodly manner, or dispute in the best way. And they say there are other verses that even say that about disputes that the Muslims had with the idolaters. One could say that probably the most important verse in this context is Surah 41, verse 34, which states, "The good deed and the evil deed are not equal. Repel by that which is better. Then behold, the one between whom and thee there is enmity shall be as if he were a loyal, protecting friend." Now here, this word in better, and repel by that which is better, it can also mean more beautiful or more virtuous. The absence of a direct object after the verb repel opens the meaning to many possibilities. Some say it means repel anger with patience, repel error with truth, repair ignorance and heedlessness with clemency, and repelling those who commit evil with pardon. If others disobey God in how they treat an individual, then that person should, according to Ibn Kathir, one of the most famous commentators, continue to obey God in how that person responds. And said that then such conduct can lead to reconciliation, love, and empathy. Now, to repel evil with good does not mean to surrender before one's enemy or to accept falsehood over truth. And this is one of the key things here. Not accept falsehood over truth, but to avoid reciprocating harm whenever such avoidance will not lead to a greater evil. In this vein, there's a very famous hadith which one of the schools of Islamic law considers axiomatic. It says, "La dar wa la dira." There is no harm and no requiting harm in Islam. And there's another famous hadith which says, "Keep relations with those who cut them off from you. Give to those who deny you, and ignore those who transgress against you." Viewing this verse 41-34 in spiritual terms, other commentators say that the root meaning of repel with that which is better is that one should repel one's own base tendencies by practicing virtue. Now, this idea of virtue brings us to the last item that was listed in the lecture topic that I was given, and that is beauty. The word for virtue and the word for beauty, a word that's commonly translated as that, in the Quran, have the same root. Virtue is literally to do that which is beautiful. And it could also be translated as to make beautiful. And this term is, do I have chalk here? I'll write it up on the board. Ihsan. Literally, it's making beautiful. Verse 2877 of the Quran says, "Do what is beautiful as God has done what is beautiful to you." Whereas God has made the outward forms of things beautiful, to be fully beautiful in a sense is to participate in one's own inner beautification. And there's a famous prayer of the Prophet where he would say, "God, you have made beautiful my form," and here's ahsanta, "you have made beautiful my form, make beautiful my character." Ihsan, make beautiful my character. Only when God has beautified one's character is the human being able to be virtuous, to do what is beautiful. For instance, to quote the Platonic tradition, only the like can know the like. This, in turn, is thought to lead to the continued beautification of one's self. As verse 55-60 of the Quran states, "Does not doing what is beautiful beget but doing what is beautiful?" And they'll also say, "Does not virtue beget but virtue?" As the character gradually grows in beauty, one participates more fully and freely in the beautification of his or her own soul and moves closer to God, the source of all beauty. As the Quran says, God is beautiful and God loves beauty. Oh, sorry, that's a hadith. God is beautiful and God loves beauty. And also, the Quran states in 3 different times that unto God belong the most beautiful names. In effect, one could say that the purpose of the Islamic tradition, or of any religious tradition for that matter, is to beautify the human character. As the Prophet Muhammad said, I was only sent to complete the noble character traits. And in another statement he said, the best among you is the one who has the most beautiful character traits. A life that is lived in beauty is not, from the Quranic perspective or the Islamic perspective, one that is lived on the periphery, but one that's lived in the heart. As the Prophet has said, God does not look at your bodies nor at your forms, he looks at your hearts. And there's another very famous saying of the Prophet Muhammad that says, within the human being there is a clump